Hey friends, and welcome to Lizards of the Toast. So, I've been very busy working on some new projects for June that is going to enhance our channel fun. So, that's where I've been. I'm very well and good. And let's get right into this. So, this is mono black mid range, as they're calling it now, I guess. But I call it mono black rack, or the Dautai Void Masters is what I like to call this. So let's get into it. This is the decksplanation. We're going to talk about why is, what is, and what isn't. So we have our tokens. We have a little divider piece there. I just don't like my cards knocking around, so I always keep one of these art cards up front and sometimes in the back. So let's start off with our mana base. And it's actually, I'm gonna add a polluted delta and take out one of the bloodstained mires. But right now we have a marsh flats as our fetch. We have a verdant catacomb as a fetch land. We have a bloodstained mire as a fetch land. And we soon will have a Khans of Tarkur polluted delta as a fetch land. So we're gonna have all of our colors there. Isn't that gonna be neat? So picture that, right? We got white, we got green, red, and blue. So that's how that's going to be. So nobody's going to be pithing needling our things. Now, this is weird. Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. It's a legendary land, and this deck runs 1, 2, 3, 4. With the last one being the Dead Marshes. That's kind of the theme of this deck. It's very traditional. Not a lot of foils, not a lot of full arts, but then there's a few full arts that I really like that I picked out at my LGS just to throw in here. So, just a couple full arts. Mostly it's just by the book. We got Mishra's Factory. So, this can be a swamp. The 4 Tomb of Yawgmoths are essential in the deck. You could maybe do 3, but I wouldn't recommend it. So, Mishra's Factory, tap and add a colorless. Becomes a 2/2 assembly worker artifact creature until end of turn. Still land if you pay 1. Now, if we declare this as a blocker, before we tap it, we can give it +1/+1. And it'll have blocking power of 3/3. Running just 2 Mishra's Factory. Now, here is one of the wonderful parts of the deck. This is what gives us access to our toolbox. So Urza's Saga, 1, add a colorless. 2, you can add a colorless, or you can pay 2 and tap and create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token. With this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact we control. The third one. So when this third saga resolves, search your library for an artifact card, the Rack, with the mana cost 0 or 1. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So we have a lot of 1 mana artifacts in addition to the Rack that are going to be like a toolbox to deal with our opponents. So we're running 1, 2, 3, 4 Urza Sagas. And there's not a full art Urza Saga, but we have this to kind of keep that going there. Now, oh, I thought I had my Throne of Eldraine locked waiting here. I'll have to switch that up. Okay, in any case, we have a Commander Legends Baldur's Gate, Castle Lockman. We have a 1 of in here. Enters the battlefield tap unless you control a swamp. We always will be. Tap, add 1 black, and then we can add 1, 2 black, tap it, draw a card, then lose life equal to the number of cards in our hand. It's a wonderful 1 of in any deck running black. So, here's our basics. So for our basics, we got 2 of these fancy Phyrex. You remember when we opened this a long time ago? Remember when we got that? That was fun, wasn't it? We still got we got 2 black, 2 white, and 1 red, and 2 green. All right. And we also have found another one of these near mint. So we had to order it. So next time you see this deck, you'll have this near mint. There'll be 2 of these, 2 of these, and this will be replaced with another 7th edition foil near mint. And I don't know. Something about that. I love these. These are my favorite. I love the mushrooms on the tree. I love the way that looks. Very cool. So there is our land. 21 lands. 21 lands when I made this deck. There's 21 now, and there'll probably be 21 forever. All right. Now, let's talk about artifacts and the Planeswalker here. All right, there we go. So, we have Lily of the Veil. She is really wonderful in here. +1, she's going to help with the discard. -2, she's going to get rid of creatures. -6, interesting, right? Separate all permanents target player controls into 2 piles. That player sacrifices all permanents in the pile of his or her choice. You know what? I cannot say that I've gotten there. Cannot say that I've gotten there with this. Although I have done that in a Commander game or two. We have 1, 2, and then 3 lilies with this wonderful promo foil here. We actually pulled that on the channel. You guys remember that? That was fun. All right. So, we have our artifacts that are in the main deck. We have the Rack. Rack enters the battlefield, choose an opponent. The beginning of chosen player's upkeep, the Rack deals X damage to that player, where X is 3 minus the number of cards in his or her hand. I have this Rack, and then I have this Rack, and then I have a bunch of other Racks. But it's very hard to come by these Racks, but guess what? I was able to get another one, and it's on its way from Card Kingdom. So the next time you see this deck, it will probably have 2 matching Racks that are actually a Rack, and not like a kitty gate, or a doggy door, as it were. So 2 Racks. Some people run 3. I like 2. So Shadow Spear is another one that we can search up. Search that right up there, Tony. Hey, Tony, do you want to search up a Shadow Spear, my friend?
Maybe tomorrow, boss.
Okay, tomorrow it is. So Shadow Spear, just a great card. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, has trample and lifelink. Pay 1. Permanents your opponents control lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. That is wonderful. We'll be smashing rings all day long. And not just rings, am I right? So the equip cost is 2. Not bad. Nothing wrong there. We have a Pithing Needle. Ooh, gross. As Pithing Needle enters the battlefield, choose a card name. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. So if you are playing against an opponent that is running play sets of fetch lands, which is very foolish, but I see it all the time. One of my favorite things to do with a Pithing Needle is to target a fetch. So, the fetch land does have an activated ability, as we know, which is to fetch a land. So, that will turn off that fetch land. And that is a beautiful thing, my friends. We have a Wrench Mine. We're running one of these. Target player discards 2 cards from his or her hand unless he or she discards an artifact card from his or her hand. So they better pitch an artifact or they're going to be putting down 2. Now we have Thoughtseize. Favorite discard spell. Let's see. We got our discarders. Sure. Some removal. Yeah. Okay. So for our discards, we have Thoughtseize. Target player is going to reveal that hand. Choose any non-land card from it. That player discards that card. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 Inquisitions of Kozilek. And that's what we got there. Oh, look at that. Those fun 2 versions of that. And, yeah, Inquisition of Kozilek's not a bad card. It's going to hit 70% of the cards in your opponent's hand with that 3 or less mana cost. So we have a Sheoldred's Edict here. This card is awesome. There's one in the sideboard and there's one in the main deck right now, I'm pretty sure. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature. Each opponent sacrifices a creature token. Each opponent sacrifices a planeswalker. We have Not Dead After All for our scam spell. We're running 4. So you guys should know what this does. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 1 Undying Evil on the end. Now this is why we're running those fetch lands, because it's going to help with our Fatal Push. Destroy target creature if it has converted mana cost 4 or less instead of a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn. So whether we fetch on their turn, whether we fetch on our turn, we can still do Fatal Push and hit a bigger creature. So we have 1, 2, 3, and those always stay in the main deck. Now, I still say that me and the old Soggy Meatball were the first ones running this deck, but some people say that Self-Isaac is Self-Isaac or something. But I think it was the first mono black scam guys were Soggy Meatball and I, or Big Friendly Gamer, as you know him on YouTube. But this is what I run in this deck, and these guys don't. I got a Surgical Extraction. So choose target card in a graveyard other than a basic land card. Hence, fetch lands. Any number of cards with the same name as that card and exile them. Then that player shuffles his or her library. So this can go to the sideboard, but if we're playing against cards like, say, like Amulet Titan, something where we can get them to discard something and we want that out of the game for good. Or like Burn, if we get hit with like a turn 2 Boros Charm, it goes to the graveyard. We can simply make them discard something. We can pay 2 life for a black mana. So 1 and 2 of those. 2 of those in the main deck at the moment. So now let's talk about this creature base here. I noticed Shieldred the Apocalypse does not make its way in a lot of these decks, and if it does, it's a one of. But Shieldred to me acts as a rack, a late game rack. So 4/5 with Death Touch. Whenever I draw a card, I gain 2 life. That's useful by the time I can play this. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. That's useful by the time I can play this. So that with the rack is going to be devastating. So we're running 1, 2 Shieldreds. Now here's that naughty boy that everybody hates, Grief. And just to go over it, the scam is we evoke Grief, we exile a black card from our hand, evoke Grief, hit it with our Undying spell, leaves and comes back with a 1/1 counter on it, tapped if it's Undying or not dead after all, or it comes back not tapped and looking mean and lean if it is the other one, Undying Evil. So we have 1 Grief, local game store, local game store, local game store, local game store. Love those, and was very happy to get that full art one because it goes with the flavor of these full art cards. So with these guys, we don't do that flavor. You'll see this is a neat little flavor. We have also from our local game store, we have 1 Dautai Voidwalker there, right? And that's foil. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 Dautai Voidwalkers in 1 foil. We have 1 foil Bowmaster. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is going to work in conjunction in punishing that card draw and then amassing orc armies to help defend us. So there, my friends, is the main deck. And let's go over that sideboard real quick, shall we? All right, finding his way into the main deck, especially if we're going against a not very creature-centric deck, we can pull a couple removal spells and put in Turok the Dreadcanter. We can kick him. He's got protection from white, so that's really great. Whenever an opponent discards a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Turok Dreadcanter. When Turok Dreadcanter enters the battlefield, it was kicked. Target opponent discards 2 cards at random. That's brutal. So if we can kick this turn 4 and bring it out, discarding 2 cards at random by turn 4 against an 8-rack deck is nasty. So we got 1, and then we got this fancy one, both from our LGS. So I love these foil etched cards because they don't seem to get bendy. Does anybody notice this? So there's our Chalice of the Void, also from our local game store. Just pick this up. This is a very specific artifact. I just run 1 in the deck. I used to run 2, but I needed to get that slot up. So this artifact is very easy to find amongst the other artifacts because it's this full art version. So when I need Chalice of the Void, and I need to find it with Urza's Saga, I can find it very quickly this way. So we have 1 Chalice of the Void. We have Hex Parasite. So for X and a Phyrexian black, remove up to X counters from target permanent. For each counter removed this way, Hex Parasite gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And this can be paid with either a black mana or 2 life. So we'll probably pay the life. And if we can remove 3 counters from something, that's pretty big. So 1 Hex Parasite. And this is oftentimes a card that's in the main deck. Just to seek it out. Sacrifice Nile Spellbomb, exile all cards from target player's graveyard. When Nile Spellbomb is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay 1 black. If you do, you draw a card. So that card draw, exile cards from target player's graveyard, both good things. And we have a Pithing Needle, which is going to be actually replaced by a different version of this, the tattoo art version. As Pithing Needle enters the battlefield, name a card. Activated abilities of the sources with the chosen name can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. Now we run 2 Pithing Needles in here, and you could almost justify running 3 because there's so many targets for Pithing Needle. But 2 does the job pretty good. We have a Cursed Totem, and we're just running 1 of these. We cannot seek it out with Urza's Saga, unfortunately. Activated abilities of creatures can't be activated. That's going to shut down a lot. So it's 2 mana. We have a 1 of Cursed Totem in here. We have 2 Damping Spears because they're also 2. So if a land is tapped for 2 or more mana, it produces 1 colorless instead of any other type or amount. Each spell a player casts costs 1 more to cast for each other spell that player has cast this turn. Creature heavy decks, storm decks, Cascade, anything that is looking to play multiple spells, this will shut down. And also, it's great against Tron as well. I love Damping Sphere. You could almost justify running 3. So there's that other Shieldred's Shelly's Edict, as the big friendly gamer calls it. Okay, Shelly's. Choose 1. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature. Each opponent sacrifices a creature token. Each opponent sacrifices a planeswalker. And I have a feeling that that right there is going to be very important post Modern Horizons 3, maybe. Maybe I'm wrong. Just like this card, I think Modern Horizons 3 is going to absolutely make this card go over the top. And I'm probably going to add 1 more to the main deck. I haven't decided yet. Break the Ice. Destroy target land that is snow or could produce colorless. And then Overload for each. That's Overload cost. Oh, not too bad. So 1, 2 of those. Now, Necromentia. Let's say we got... This is what we have for the 3rd spot of Surgical Extraction. Choose a card name other than a basic land card name. Search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with that name and exile them. That player shuffles their library, then creates a 2/2 black zombie creature token for each card exiled from their hand this way. We are going to use this very rarely and very wisely. We'll leave it at that. We need to know what we're looking for, and we need to know how many of them there are. Typically, in this deck, I find that a good target for this is Pithing Needle, Chalice of the Void, and then oftentimes a fetch land. Just like, it's like a different kind of a Surgical Extraction that costs a bit more, but it has its uses. So here's Destroy All Creatures that can't be regenerated. This is our Atom Bomb, as it were. This is our Dr. Robert Oppenheimer's mistake. Destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated. So this is just a restart. If we have some kind of token generating creature centric deck, or even a scary board state from some kind of mono green stompy. Now, Ashiok the Dream Render. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search their library. That's very good. So Ashiok for 1 and 2 black or 2 blue, or a black and a blue. Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, then exile each opponent's graveyard. That -1 is awesome. Comes out with 5 loyalty counters. That's pretty good. Especially because that -1. So essentially, you can mill somebody for like 16, 20 cards. That'll kill Ashiok, of course, and remove it from the battlefield. But we really like this. Keeping our opponents from searching their library, because a lot of combo-centric decks are looking for certain key cards, and this is another good way to stop that. And then we just got this cool new construct, a construct, Wicked, and a construct. And friends, that pretty much does it for us. That is the decksplanation. So I think I've revealed and explained. We'll probably talk a little more in depth into... I'm thinking next month going through the decks and then talking about matchups and sideboard options. Thanks for joining me. You guys have a good one.